Alright, so it's time to end this once and for all. Again, but
Yeah.
on Quadrona.
Ugh, I don't believe it. Another dead end. You lose a contact or something?
Just as I suspected.
Of course! The factory shrunk. Well, let's stomp around until we squish it, huh?
I do not think it will be that easy to find.
Ratchet still raises a good point though. What if they just arrive at the facility when, bring themselves giant size and squash it? I get the thought process is they want to make sure that Otto Destruct is stopped completely, so they have to be, first person there. But I don't know, I think there could be some level of creativity that you can put to the size changing device.
It's like, I'll give them credit. With the first one, it made sense since they were trying to get all the intel they could. Here, though, they want to just stop these guys. Like, why not just, again, try and locate the factory while at normal size and then squash it? I mean, now, if it were hidden at a subatomic level, then I'd get that, but...
We don't know how
as we
much,
know, that's...
yeah, we don't know how much, small the Technomites are in relation to anything.
It's like Teo, it's two things. Like Teo said, the emulations by implicit conversions are more focused on accuracy rather than necessarily improvement. So they want to try to have the game run like it did in the original hardware. That being said, it is also important to remember that Teo is playing this on the 2013 era PS4. Because right now I'm replaying through Jeanne d'Arc via the implicit conversions emulation. And I can tell that on the PS5, the frame rate runs perfectly smoothly. So this might also be that the emulation is probably more optimized for the Pro and the 5 rather than the base.
It might also just depend from game to game, because if you remember, Resistance Retribution was locked at 30, but had no real problem whatsoever in frame rate.
Okay. And you know what? Look, to give the game credit, it keeps the frame stuttering mostly to, like, the going from world to world bit, which is much better than if, it were stuttering the whole time. Like, look at this right now. It's moving nice and smoothly. It's just that I can't imagine that back on the PSP, the whole game may have been stuttering like that.
The loading times were actually longer, I can tell you that, because I played that version.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. A lot of games on the PSP had quite spotty frame rates here and there. Like the original Crisis Core, for example, on the PSP, that game could chug a bit on the original PSP.
I think it was one of those cases where, in order to compensate that, the quality of the video, the image would actually drop to compensate, kind of like in the PS3 Xbox 360 version of Nier, but because it was the PSP, on software mode, every single model being dragged, having dragged borders, did not make that super noticeable.
It's also...
It is one of those things where a smaller resolution actually can help out a game.
A lot of people don't remember this because the HD collections are now the primary availability of the game. But the original PSP release of Birth by Sleep actually had two modes: a lower end mode that would basically consume less battery on your PSP, and one that would try to make the game run smoother performance-wise, but it would cost more battery. So PSP games were kind of this middle ground where the developers were trying to really juggle performance and graphics all at the same time.
A lot of modern gacha games tend to have this very option in order to accommodate to different smartphone models. Also, just to mention quickly, the new armor set that I'm having, again, I will explain more in the extra section, but if you noticed, it's more bulky. I even leave, footprints on the ground. And right now it's glowing red because an enemy hit me. It's called the bomb set. Basically, it provides more defense. For the base game, non-challenge mode, it is the highest defense. But if I get hit once, I start glowing, and it keeps like that until I hit an enemy with the Omni Wrench, which adds an explosion effect. It's not that much, but it's a cute touch, and in so many emergency situations, it can actually, put you out of a spot.
I noticed that the clones, yes, we're now doing with Ratchet's clones, are also decked out in gray armor. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or does the game...
Most of them do have Ratchet's base design from the first game, but it's worth noting that this Clone Saga is having a bit of, baking problems, as you'll be able to see eventually.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I was wondering though if the game does a little cheeky thing where, based off of what outfit you're having Ratchet wear, the clones will also reflect that.
By default, they're supposed to have the original outfit. Their weapon is also according to that. Depending on which type of clone you will find, again, it will make more sense later. They will have different types of weapons associated with. The base model that we encountered so far has the lacerator, basically.
See, when I'm playing, I tried the Jeanne d'Arc PSP emulation both on the base PS4 and on my PS5. And when I'm walking through the world map with the 3D model, Tim knows what I'm talking about. Like the frame rate chugs a bit, like it did on the PSP. But if you play it on the PS5, it runs really smoothly. So I get the feeling these emulations are more optimized for the newer consoles.
Basically, the gimmick with this particular spot is that the game tricks you into potentially shooting the enemy down by standing on that platform, but if you notice, the platform will go down, and if you were actually standing upon it, it treats it as a mini cutscene where it drops you right in the middle of the enemies, and they just start assaulting you. But, since I know this game like the back of my hand, I know already where to stand to cheese this piece of shit.
That being said, no, Tails right. The loading time seem to have been smoothed over with the emulation.
Basically true, but much like I mentioned for the previous game, the whole ship going from point A to point B screen, that serves to mask the loading screen. If the loading time is long enough, you will see that going nowhere for a very long time.
Yeah, that's another thing as well. Like it depends on how, because that animation in every game, aside from maybe Rift Apart, because in Rift Apart you can skip those because of the SSD. All of these, all the way back to the first game, those spaceship bits, those are meant to cover up load times, of course. So it also is possible that the game is just designed with those load times in mind and trying to rush the spaceship cutscenes might break the game as well. So
also maybe because it's treated as a video file potentially, that wouldn't surprise me. It's similar.
That is also possible, yeah.
It's similar to how the cutscenes are still, low res because that's the original design that they had, unfortunately. Also, just to mention, when it comes to final dungeons compared to the previous game, this one is fine. The difficulty is definitely there, and I argue it's not too oppressing, and the checkpoints are varied enough so that, you don't have to restart the whole thing from the beginning, so there is that. There you go.
I think the only thing that's awkward is, as you mentioned at the start, the jump is a bit gimped, but typically by this point you'll probably have adapted to it, so as long as you're used to that, it seems like you should be fine with this final dungeon.
Yeah. Again, if anything, it's more the final boss fight that returns to the whole, sponginess of the early games, unfortunately. Also, in case you're wondering, the mannequins, the training mannequins, cannot be actually killed or stopped, and they can actually hurt you if you stand actually, in range of their swipes, so you don't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know why they have a clown nose, especially because they're still shaped like Ratchet, so you would think the clones will kind of have some, internal questions about, their existence. That's the kind of key point in most clone storylines. But no, these are acting like in a more, generic drone-like way.
Quick, defeat the low poly ratchets.
Yeah, I remember that show.
It also kind of reminds me of the Silent Hill 2 remake, where they slightly altered the UFO ending, where in the original it was basically the protagonist of the first game. But in this one instead is remake, the Regiment protagonist meeting the low poly PS2 version of himself. Which is apparently an alien. And yes, for that, they use the Comic Sans as the font. Again, Team Blooper is guilty of many things, but at the very least I will say that they bothered to actually, be cheeky and actually talk the talk and walk the walk with the Silent Hill 2 remake.
The fact that they're called Team Blooper?
Blue Bear.
Oh, Blue Bear, okay.
No idea what that's supposed to mean. It's not about blueberries or something like that. Also, one of the weapons that I got... Sorry, Waves?
Blue something. I don't even know what they are.
Also, this weapon that I got, as you can see, it's very powerful. It's a literal laser beam. It's not a rhino. I'll get the rhino, in challenge mode as usual. But it's still very powerful. But the trade-off is that it makes me completely stationary, meaning that against many targets that keep shooting me, it's potentially counterproductive. One of the upgrades that you can get from the Incognito is that it provides you a small shield that absorbs a couple of projectiles, so it helps a bit better on that, but it's more recommended for boss fights in challenge mode. Shit. Also, yeah, pressing the big red button opens the door. Okay.
Of course.
And yeah, that's basically the end of the dungeon. After this, we just have the boss fight against Otto Destruct, and we're good to go. Again, it's a bit sudden, as you can see, but again, concessions that had to be made with the hardware.
I'm actually more surprised we didn't get a dramatic cutscene revealing the Ratchet clones, honestly. It's just poof, there
Well,
they
we
are.
already knew that from previous cutscenes and what they were doing, so...
Yeah, but we never get a dramatic reveal of them.
How very nice to see you. Although I'm sure you've seen enough of yourself already.
If you're wondering, Otto Destruct is also with Regiment Ward.
I am sorry that no one gives you credit for your work.
Cute.
But there are other ways to earn respect.
You actually pulled that cheesy story. This isn't about credit for our work or respect or whatever nonsense you've come to believe. This is about power and what
Just letting you know we are absolute douches and it is okay for you to defeat us without any remorse.
Ratchet is not really wrong,
stronger than the
so...
power of the mind. Do you see this area behind me? That is what this has all been leading up to.
So yes, I'm not even kidding, Otto Destruct has the same plan that Dr. Doom had in the Brain Drain PSA comic. Although in this case it's more intelligent because it's not kidnapping children to do that, because it's not a PSA.
Then I will transfer all of their brain power to me to become the most intelligent entity the universe has ever
So he
known.
legit thinks it was destiny.
No shit,
that...
Clank!
Clank!
I love that where, stories actually do completely play straight one of the main pure-hearted main characters having to say, but that's evil! It's so stupid. Alright, first phase you have to survive a bunch of clones, and some of these have different designs, like these skinny guys with the flamethrowers and are very, very fast, like they're high on cocaine or something. Goddamn. But later on, you will be able to see a couple of bulky ones. Oh, like this one, you know, Marcus Phoenix style, or Rob Liefeld, let's say, just with better feet, which packs instead the shotgun. So you have to basically keep your distance with them, but they're more spongy. You don't have to kill a set amount of them, but if you do, with enough of them, you do get one of the skill points. You just need to survive 3 minutes for the story.
It's literally the isn't that corrupt?
Yeah,
thing
basically.
This is illegal, you know.
I argue so, but at least in that game, the line made more sense in context, you know, with the Aldo Corridai being seized by Ganon's minions, and the peacefulness of the village was disrupted immediately. So.
Macro research could have cured cancer 70 years ago. We won't let that happen. We'd lose too much money. Isn't that cheating the public?
So if I understand correctly, the big bad believes that Ratchet, by destiny, found Clank, or it's in Ratchet's nature to find intelligent beings.
Seriously, these Ratchets are fucking cursed, Jesus.
I mean, they kind of are in universe being, you know, the clones and everything. Like I said, it's also an excuse for the developers to, you know, experiment a bit with the concept while also recycling partially some assets. There is also a clone model that could not be made in the final product, but is still shown in the final cutscene. I will point out when that happens. But it's showcased in the Insomniac Museum equivalent of this game.
So if I understand correctly, the villain believes that Ratchet by nature found Clank, and that's why he wanted to clone Ratchet.
No, it's just because he believes again, Ratchet is the most efficient type of soldier, thanks to his previous, you know, heroic deeds that had happened. And the clones serves as basically the foot soldier of an invasion, where Otto will kidnap instead the most brilliant minds of the galaxy.
Okay, I got the bit about why he wanted to clone Ratchet.
No, he wanted to clone Ratchet because he's the perfect soldier. That's basically it.
Yeah. That bit I got. It's just like his last part of the plan made me wonder, did he think that Ratchet just naturally found Clank, or his mentality is basically, I'll just conquer the world and then bring all the most
basically,
intelligent beings?
Only, you know, on a universe scale. Time's almost up. Also, yeah, you noticed the bubble shield for this game. It's a bit more efficient than in the main trilogy, I will give it that, even at lower levels. But it's still, you know, it's a pain in the ass to actually level up. Alright.
Looks like Otto overlooked one thing. I'm not half as good without you.
True.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, this is also where Qwark's subplot comes to an end.
Yes, it's me, you idiot. I mean, son. Now be a good boy and get those...
And Qwark obliges immediately.
Papa, why did you make Qwark so tiny? I've got a job to do, son, and it's time I...
Yeah, you see also what I mean, how important is the shrink, you know, and the bigger race size, because now basically Otto stole it, and it's gonna be a player part not only for the final boss fight, but also for the ending.
I honestly forgot Qwark was in this game.
Yeah, like I said, his subplot is really just there. It will have more to do in the next game, thankfully, don't worry about that.
Also, you gotta love how he falls for the villain card mentality of, well, he could have just had Qwark crush them right there and then, but nope, he decides to shrink Qwark and grow himself to do it himself because he's that much of a dick.
He wants to do that everything himself or some shit like that, I don't know.
I mean, look, I'll say this about this game overall. This feels like a game where if you really want your Ratchet and Clank fix, it's good, though. The plot is quite...
Ooh, nice
quite a,
Very clever, too.
Oh.
Might have Jim this time.
A fever. It's like a Ratchet Clank fever dream.
Yes! Heck, it literally is a fever dream at times.
All the time.
Alright, this is the excuse for you to have a Giant Clank section, again, just like at the end of the first game. Again, there's also the whole thing about the size-changing device gadget not being consistent in the slightest, because, you know, what's stopping Otto from growing even more if he wants at this point?
He wants to fight fair, despite everything.
Again,
but,
limitations of the hardware, I get it, but, you know, you probably should have tried to provide some sort of story reason, not even a precise, you know, super detailed one, but, you know, just like a throwaway line or something, like saying he needs to charge the batteries or some shit.
It's interesting also, because when I
Also,
first saw
use
this
the camera.
game, I thought, oh, you know, size matters, so this means that they'll be doing stuff like, you know, the Giant Clank mech throughout the game, but no, I think this is the...
Remember, we also
One
had
of
the
the
shootout
fewest-
we also had the shootout
Yeah, the
section.
shootout section.
There is an optional
But aside
one, like
from that...
there is an optional, an optional one, but since it's very similar to the first one, I bother not showing it because it really doesn't add anything and doesn't have a story reason.
Of course, like, going strictly off of, you know, what's actually required or what's part of the story, we surprisingly spend very little time with this.
Oh, check this out. The leader of the Technomites, everyone.
You should be more careful. You almost hit me with that.
Now, the game actually gives you a bit of a pause, you know, before the boss fight, but because it otherwise be a bit of a pace breaker, I just edited, so we skipped immediately to the
I was
fight.
gonna say, what's the point of those cutscenes that are only like 1 second long?
Again, it's time to
Show how we got here.
basically also. Anyway, final boss fight. During this very first phase, Otto actually has a shield that you need to deplete before actually, you know, properly damage his health bar. And after that, he basically starts running away like a bitch. At the halfway point, I think, he had basically dropped the shield and started attacking instead more aggressively. For the first phase, like I shown, it's best to use instead the laser ray. After that, well, just try with the rockets, honestly, and the every single turret minion that you can find. Again, it's really recommended that you try to level up as much as you can about your weapons before this point. The clone factory itself is actually not too bad of a spot to farm.
But yeah, no, like, yeah, I'd say this plot really does feel like a fever dream. Heck, we literally do have some fever
nightmare,
dream
yeah.
levels.
Also, trust me, I make it look easier than it actually is. This boss fight is kinda infamous in the franchise for, you know, how spongy otherwise Otto is, and the attacks that can chug away most of your health. I just, you know, am more prepared.
Yeah, it's been a while. I don't recall much future games heavily referencing this one.
No, they don't. The Technomites, as far as I know, are not referencing the site. Remember, Jovan, until 2017, Insomnia was pretending this never happened. And there you go, we're done.
Plot over.
Hey, that's Crunch.
Wait, how did you get shrunk down too?
Well, we're not. At this point, we're normal-sized.
These are Qwark's real parents. Scrunch says they were killed by defective equipment.
Okay, if I recall
created by
correctly, the Future
Technomites.
Saga actually retcons these by saying that Qwark's mother is still alive or something. I don't remember the details.
I'll never know my real parents.
I recognize your parents from the photo. They were great superheroes in their day.
Clank,
You should be
I
very
appreciate the
proud.
sentiment, but they
Somehow,
really
I don't
probably
think pride is
shouldn't,
what he's
consider how Qwark turned out.
How could you
Hell,
do
but we know
something
thanks to
so
the third game that he was beating up everyone at
and you
school.
used it against me to get what
Yeah.
you wanted.
Also, you gotta love how
I
him lying to Qwark about him being his father basically just amounts to him having Qwark hold Ratchet up for a bit and then let him go.
think I'm an idiot, do you?
Yes.
Well, how about having this brain instead of yours?
This is it,
You
this
want
is Qwark's
intelligence?
actual villain
You're
origin
about to
story,
get-
goddamn.
The opposite of that.
I don't think that's such a good idea, Qwark. why don't you climb out of there and let's see if we can calm you down a bit, huh?
Yes, Qwark, you should consider what you are about to do. Otto is right. You do not know the effect of this machine.
At this point, I don't care.
Uh-oh.
Oh, for fuck's sake. However, unfortunately, this means that the machine still works, but Otto gets instead the mentality of Scruncher.
No. Now what are we gonna do with him?
So that's how our villain is ultimately
It appears that
defeated.
Scrunch just
I guess all
added
the
another
bullets will be
family
pumped
member.
into him
Great.
meant nothing.
Can we get out of here now? I've got another massage scheduled on Pokataru in an hour.
You got it.
Honestly, part of me even wonders why they were so worried on if he would have gotten Qwark's brains or whatnot.
They did not know what, as Benchtime mentioned, they did not know if the machine would have been effective. And when it got turned up, it was by accident, not by their intention.
Original package unless sufficient air holes are provided.
Well, I'm glad they found a use for those things.
Yes.
Yes, so the clones do get work.
As toys. There you go. The hunched one in the middle, that's the unused
Standing up with
model.
the squid beast of Oceania 8. I pulled out my trusty electro gun, but the salt water had shorted it out. Hey! I was just
Also,
getting
you
the
don't
gun
want to put
He may be
Qwark back
small,
to his
but
normal
his ego's
size?
still big, huh?
Hey, yeah, that's how it ends, by the way. Just the only thing missing was the freeze frame. Jesus.
Yeah, huh. I don't want to say it's a bad plot, but...
I'll still take this over that Deadlocked / Gladiator every day, I'm sorry.
I feel like this and Deadlocked are deadlocked and they're tied for me. Like, okay, I feel like each has something that the other's missing. Deadlocked definitely felt a bit darker and a bit more dour for a Ratchet thing, but it felt like it at least had the plot and structure and, you know, stuff holding it together. This one does feel more befitting of the Ratchet and Clank tone, but it feels like at times they do, oh, what's funny rather than what makes sense, essentially, to the point where we're kind of left with a plot that's nonsense. And I don't mean in, like, the typical Ratchet and Clank nonsense way. I mean just they were throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck.
Alright, while you're at it, Job, I want to say the rest of your final thoughts.
Might as well. Okay, if you're looking for a portable Ratchet and Clank, this seems like the game for you. Like, for all intents and purposes, it seems to replicate the gameplay from the classic trilogy, mostly to a T, just on a handheld, essentially. Save for the gimped jump, which can be annoying, but if you get used to that well enough, it seems like you'll function just well in this game here and there. So yes, if you're in it strictly for portable Ratchet and Clank, buy this game. That being said, given how the years of the PSP and, God, especially the PS Vita are well behind us, you'll likely be playing this on console, in which case it kind of pales in comparison to its console brethren. And, you know, I'm gonna be fair, it's a portable game, essentially. Now, mind you, that's not an excuse. Portable games can be on par, if not better than their console variations, but this one was strictly the console games translated to portable. Exactly the same, so in a sense, of course it was gonna work in its field, just maybe not as well as the console games. But no, that's not the main reason I feel like it pales in comparison. My main issue is just the package as a whole, which, again, to be fair, more befitting of a portable one. The adventure feels much shorter, of course. Some of the levels feel a bit weirdly oriented in compared to the originals, which again, I'm guessing was to befit the portable nature of it. But one thing that I can't excuse with the portable stuff is, well, the plot. Like I mentioned before, I'm not the biggest fan of the plot, honestly. It's not terrible, mind you, but it feels like at some points they have an idea of what they're doing, then the next it's just random hijinks, which does make it a bit harder for me to be invested in, I'll be honest. Again, it's hard for me to decide which I'd take between this or deadlocked. Like, I feel both plots have their issues. I might take Deadlocked a little bit, if only because it feels like the plot is more focused, whereas this one just has everything and anything happen. That being said, my issues aside, like I said, if you're a big Ratchet & Clank aficionado, this is a game that'll perfectly work for you. It returns back to the gameplay that you liked the original trilogy for, so go ahead and have a ball with it.
Alright, Dweebs.
Next.
It's fine. You can tell it's definitely a more of a bite-sized take on Ratchet and Clank because it's on the PSP. But I mean, by PSP spin-off game standards, it's not too bad. It at least doesn't fall into the trap that a lot of handheld games seem to do, in terms of being based off series known for being more on consoles, and try to be too ambitious for the system. So there's that, at least they know their boundaries. And the story is competent, although again, you could have removed Qwark from the story and it wouldn't have changed anything.
But Wibbs, what about the plot twist of his father not father? That was a thing.
That's the twist. That would have been pretty obvious. The music's fine. That's it. To sum up this game in general, it's perfectly fine. It's were there any other PSP spin-offs after this?
Yes, Secret Agent Clank, which will be the game after this.
Okay, I'll be interested to see how that goes. But yeah, that's size matters. It's okay.
All right, Pedro.
It's fine. I'll take the plot of this over Deadlocked as well, because Deadlocked is just dull at best and just bafflingly try-hard at worst. This, at the very least, like Jova said, feels more in line with the tone you expect of PS2 era Ratchet. But yeah, it's clear that this was written while everybody was on acid. Because there's a lot of stuff here that's just downright loony or just really questionable in terms of like, what the fuck were these people even thinking? A lot of this, and yeah, like Theo said, TJ Fixman later will retcon some of the stuff here. Even so, it does. It's, let me put it this way: if you just take it as a non-canon game taking place in an alternate timeline just for the lulz, it's a fun what the fuck type of story that just allows you to just be baffled at how they keep throwing shit at the wall, hoping something sticks. But yeah, that being said, yeah, I'm not too bummed about this being decanonized, to be honest, because while not bad, while not like terrible or unenjoyable necessarily, yeah, this is not really up to snuff. As for the gameplay, yeah, for a game that's trying to just replicate the PS2 games on the PSP, it does. Again, it's kind of like the PSP GTA games, right? It does the best job possible, and it does it decently. Although, yeah, of course, there's going to be some concessions, of course. The voice acting is, of course, still great. The presentation for a PSP game looks pretty great. Although, I have to say, once again, man, those low poly Ratchet clones look scary. But yeah, but again, it's fine, but it's definitely not something that I'm like. I haven't played this game in years, and to be perfectly honest, this playthrough hasn't exactly made me want to play it again, because while it's fine, there are far better Ratchet & Clank games I could be playing instead of this one. So I'm not really in a rush to get back to this. So okay.
All right, I'll conclude. Again, this is perfectly fine for me. Just, a small side adventure that, can take place, as far as I'm concerned, at any point between 3 and 4. Again, yes, some stuff is relatively wacky compared to the regular trilogy, but honestly, I don't mind it. I probably needed a bit more to deepened some of the themes, and like I said, I argue in a more graceful way of introducing the size-changing gadget, because considering how important it plays during the climax. But again, for what it wants to be, it's perfectly serviceable, and the gameplay actually compensates, even if you don't particularly care about the story. Because again, it plays pretty much like your traditional Ratchet and Clank game. Again, the only real concession is unfortunately the performance. Yeah, that's what you have to deal with. But otherwise, again, perfectly serviceable as it is. In my eyes, they accomplished what they were set up to do, as in trying to see if the PS2 experience can actually properly be just as, competently playable on the go. And yeah, I argue even with the hardware limitation, they managed to work it out, even without concessions. That is to say, they will simultaneously be better and worse with Secret Agent Clank, but it's a story for another time. And the next part, the game is not over yet, technically. Next part serves to showcase some of the extra stuff, like in the other armor sets that you can get in challenge mode, and the equivalent of inside a museum, the high impact treehouse. So see you for that.
Yeah.
Yep.